Hello, my name is Vilcata, and welcome to Pixel Perfect, episode 42. This is a Let's Play of Satisfactory. If you are new to this, we have been getting a bit more traffic lately, so I do want to take a moment to welcome any new viewers to our wonderful series, and welcome back, of course, all of our regulars. And today we are carrying on with our current sub-series, which is the Path to Aluminum. Of course, we are a couple of episodes already into it. We've already done more or less all the math, and we have prepared most of the external supplies that are going to have to come in, bauxite, for example, and silica, though we are going to need to bring a little bit more in. But I've admittedly been putting off recording this episode for basically a whole week. I've been thinking about it, and so the problem is that I wanted this to be a three-part series, and we got pushed a little bit back last episode because we needed to expand our incoming resource, but I didn't want to skip over that because we explain and teach as we go, because I want others to be able to replicate and feel confident they can do this as well. And I don't want it to look like, well, that he's an experienced player and he always gets it right in the first shot. And that's not going to be true even for us veterans. There is always room to reevaluate your initial plan and to see whether or not it could be expanded upon or improved, or just, if you just want to do it a different way. Don't be afraid to go back and change what you've already done or alter your plans for the future. And I didn't want to cut that out. But point being is that we are at a point in this build where we have about 1.5 episodes worth of work to do. And I had considered, do I just do a massive time lapse and then do a quick walkthrough? And I think it's going to have to be a hybrid, because this is an entire complex. It's not just one building that we're building. And there are a lot of cosmetic and aesthetic concerns that are part of the design that I don't want to yada yada past. And also, because it's a multi-building build, we don't want to do a complete building and then a complete building and then a complete building, because we want to be able to do a cosmetic across them that is both tying in the complex as well as giving each building's opportunity to be unique. And if we just speed through that in a time lapse, we kind of lose some of that opportunity to do fine detailing. So the short answer is that there's probably going to be 2 more parts of this. We'll see how much we get done today, and I'm really eager to get going with it. So I will meet you guys at the site, and we'll get started. Here we are at the job site, and I kind of want to start off with addressing some of the design changes from last episode. I've refined a little bit better what I want to do with this area, and I think it's going to work out better. And one of the things I had mentioned was that that train station down there was always meant to be temporary, so it worked out pretty well where it was at, and that we could make it permanent. But I wanted to incorporate it more into the build, or at least get it closer. And when I thought more about what that meant, you see the station over there. We had laid this out in last episode, and if I were to incorporate a station into this build, it meant pretty much putting it right here, because we don't have a lot of space elsewise. And this just wasn't acceptable. I have plans for the space that I haven't gone over. And I didn't want that to be a thing. We could have put it here, and I could probably make it look okay, but it would have then been in the way, just visually speaking. This factory is going to be, loosely speaking, pointed in this direction. You're meant to view the factory from over here, and of course, many of these trees are going to be gone, but having the station in the way would have really messed with our sight lines. I always consider where our trains are running and what the visibility of things are from the trains. Like our tower of power there, which as you can see is still not finished. And yeah, we're not going to go over that. That's a live stream thing. It's probably more or less finished by the time you're watching this video. Also, I've never mentioned this belt, but ignore it even though it's going through the floor. That's going to our temporary aluminum plant, which of course is down there. And it's just one machine giving us the temporary that we need. You can't even see it from here. That will be gone. It won't be running to the floor. It's going to be running these machines. Anyway, I decided that I didn't want the train to pass in front of the facility, so running it behind the facility seemed like a pretty good alternative. And that's going to require us to move these, but that's all right. That's fine. We didn't finalize these against the wall. This was just meant to be a rough draft of where we're going to put these. Also, I want to change the shape of this building here. And I want to change the orientation like such. So for the first 6, and they probably won't be exactly right here, but for the first 6 refineries, I think we're going to turn them sideways, and that way we can kind of do an L shape and go into these that will still be the direction that they're in. And that's going to culminate in probably one organic building that we bring these two together in. And I do expect that we're going to do a time lapse, but probably will be mostly for placing the buildings and getting the walls just generally outlined. We might not even put roofs on during the time lapse because we want to get all of these machines kind of solidified in where they're going to be and worry about the aesthetic of the walls and the roofs and everything else afterwards. Because we're going to have a lot of logistics concerns about where we're going to belt things, where we're going to pipe things. And also, I want this complex to be more appealing from the outside than we normally do. Now, we always try to make things look nice, but this is going to be a multi-building complex that is telling a story. And I want it to look very industrial. So we'll probably do things like running conveyors out of windows where we don't necessarily need to, so we can run them around walls and make pipes visible. So that's something that we will not do in the time lapse. Finally, I want to address that in the last episode, I started laying out the foundries, and then I lost track a little bit, I guess. And I looked back at my spreadsheet to see what was everything else I need to cover, and thought that I was talking about the assemblers, which was not the case. So like, oh, well, okay, we're done. No, we need a place for assemblers. And I came back and was like, well, I could lay them out like this. That's a possibility. Probably they will be over in that region. But fortunately, the math for the foundries works out because there was 24 foundries and 24 assemblers. So that grid was still accurate when I was targeting 24. And finally, one thing I want to go over is the change in the rail line is going to go this way instead. We could have wrapped it around and run it across, and it actually wouldn't look bad to have the train passing in front as long as the station wasn't in front of it. But it kind of made more sense to connect it right here, and that's potentially less that we have to stick out over the cliff. So this is the new way we're doing it. And I didn't connect all this because I wanted to show you the process I went through and how I always go through when I'm doing lines. As you saw, I already had the corner drawn. I didn't have the in-between drawn because I lay out the platforms, I get the corners. I don't have any power without this being connected. And anywhere there is a junction shift, like the elevation changes, I always do a 2-piece that goes over it wherever possible, because that helps smooth out the transition, the curve when it's going between elevations. Excuse me, I'm busy here. All right, let's get ourselves off the ground, which means getting these electrified. Oh no, I dropped off. I'm in their territory. We have another jetpack. Hang on. Okay. This is electrified because I have the station actually run through power lines. But if you weren't aware, you draw power from connected rails when you're using the hover pack, which is super nice. It allows you to fly over anywhere that you have rails without having to, spam poles. So as you can see, there's only one rail here. This is going to be the new incoming line, which kind of made sense because it's going to come from bauxite, and that way then come in and go right up there. It's not going to be a two-way line because I couldn't cleanly bring it back, and I also couldn't cleanly make this turn to connect going straight to there. I can make it this way, it's less of a turn, but that was just too high of a degree of a turn. So we will still use the original down ramp, and we'll bring back the train through that way. So let's get back up to the site and finish connecting this down. I'd like to make sure these are actually on the line in case I ever need to connect something or remap out a range. It's not strictly required. Oops, I think I missed the connection. I did. All right. And the other reason I wanted to come down here was because I wanted to talk about the water. It's kind of the last elephant in the room. Now, currently we are set up to pump the water from here, and we, decided to go on a unpacking bottled water loop because what's kind of cool, and that's what the people who responded to the request actually said they wanted to see. So that's a thing, but the thing here is that I'm not sure I want to do it from here. Because if we're pumping it from right here, it kind of makes it just, run the pipes up. And I don't really want to do that. I want to do the loop. So it's either I do this here and I build a building here that packages it all, and then I still have to run conveyors all the way up this hill in a kind of a awkward manner up to where we're going to unpack them, and then conveyors back. Or we build them somewhere else, package them somewhere else, and bring the bottles in with the train. I have not decided which direction I'm going to go with that. And water is going to be the last thing that we're going to address in this build. If we want to package it at a remote location and ship it in, the concern here is that we're running out of train cars with our standard length of train. Now we can add a sixth, and that's a possibility, and maybe we will. But currently we are looking at one train car at least for bauxite, 2 for silica, 1 for limestone, and then we have to have 1 to take the products out when we start making our aluminum products. So we could probably get away with doing double duty, like maybe on the limestone. We could bottle water and have that same car pick up both, and then we can just run them out through smart splitters. So there are options, and it's something I will consider as we go along. But I'm going to worry the least about the water. I'm also probably not going to cover putting down the miners for limestone. Limestone is not in this area. But there is limestone over here at our bauxite, and it's a normal node. We should be able to overclock that as necessary for all the limestone we have, and we can just run it there and pick it up. So I'm not going to bother recording on camera, putting down that miner, and running the belt to the station. That's nothing. I want to get started with placing out these buildings, getting where we're going to want them. We're actually going to have to move these forward one more because we need a row here for all of our conveyors. And the other reason why I wanted the train station behind everything is because there's going to be a lot of conveyors running product there and back, and I don't want a bunch of belt spam out in front of everything. So we'll have a back row dedicated for conveyors carrying things around. So let's jump into a quick time lapse and get the outlines of these buildings placed, get the actual machines placed, and we can start going into the logistics of getting everything piped and conveyored and finalizing any math that we still need to work out. So let's get started. Oh boy, that was a lot of work. Of course, what you saw in the time lapse didn't seem like too much work, but I have done quite a bit since then. Also, I did a little bit of editing and just to keep track of how much time we have, and noticed that the hoverpack sound was really aggressive in the background. And I've toned that down in this video, but I also discovered since then that you can set individual audio properties depending on the object. So like I specifically was able to turn down just the hoverpack and nothing else. It's a very nice feature. I appreciate it. I wish more games did that. But let's get to all this work because we have a lot to cover and only so much time to do it in. We want to go over some of the math. We're not going to go too deep into it, but I do want to go over all the logistics that have been completed and what still needs to be done for next episode. Now, of course, our first set of refineries only have one output, which is the solution. So there's no belting. Also, very conveniently, it's a one-to-one, right? One refinery output is one refinery input. So we have combined them in twos because that's the most we can fit. These are putting out 240 per minute. So two of them together is 480. That's, we can't, a third one would get over the 600 mark. But that's simple enough, right? We're not going too far. That's why we did this little clever thing. And just 2 goes to 2 and so on and so forth. We don't have to use any pumps because we're not gaining any elevation. So the head lift coming from the machines is plenty. And we have all of our conveyoring here pre-mathed out, but you'll see there is no conveyoring going along the back. We'll get into that in the next episode. It's going to be quite demanding, but I do want to show you the strategy that I'm using, which is that, I have pre-mathed what the machine's going to need. And then I've put a sign to remind myself what I need to connect to this. So there will be 600 bauxite coming in this window. Likewise, another 600 bauxite coming in here. And of course, that will come from the train station. Also, you'll see here in the distance, another train station. We could have gotten away with just this one, but there were some logistic issues that were going to really cause us some problems with using just that station. And I was prepared to do that. But as I went on, I got the idea in my head. I'm like, what if we could just squeeze another little station in here? We don't need a full station. because we have a very high demand for like our silica. It's all the way at the end, and it was going to have to travel the full length and take up all kinds of space. And I just toyed with it, and I was able to squeeze one in and even save this tree back here. As you can see, it doesn't clip. And this will be our silica only station. You can see it's not even on the ground. It had to touch the hillside here, which pushed it up off the ground. But that's all right. It's all right. As you can see, it's not a problem. So I did squeeze this in here, which also changed out the order in which the trains will come in. And I say trains because there will be more than one train, but we'll get into that as well. But we're shortcutting the belts needed by being able to put our silica over here, and that's going to alleviate a lot of strain on our belt stacking, because when we get over here, we have 4 belts of 540 scrap coming in, and that's going to add 4 belts to this line. And that's another thing I wanted to get over. I think this is well, let's come to that in a second here. Of course, we have the solution that's going in. That's pretty simple. This is going to be our coal, and that is 720 coal per minute. So that's 1 belt. Coal is going to be its own challenge. We'll come back to that in a moment. But we're going to have our water coming in. And as I mentioned before, I went to 6 refineries, which is 1,200 bauxite, because I wanted to be able to do this with the recycled water. So we have our clean water coming in, and that will be 2 400 pipes coming in. And then we have 400 more that we need, but we're going to take that from our output. And again, this is not a circulating loop. There will be X amount of outcome, but it's not going to be put all back into the cycle. And this makes it a lot more reliable. Basically, these 2 that are receiving output water are not being supplemented by a secondary source, and that's what makes this secure. So 400 of the water coming from here will go back to there, and that will be 4 machines, 1, 2, 3, 4. They are producing 120 apiece, so there'll be 480 water coming off of this line. And to balance that, we have put a little valve here. So 400 is going to go that way, and the extra 80, if we can click on it, will go right here. This way we don't have too much water going the wrong direction. And then the rest of it will come here, and that is going to make its way over to our copper ingot refineries. And I think what we're going to do here, we have a couple of options. Run to the floor. What we can do is we can pipe this down through the floor. Oh, I turned to get power line here so we can do this. We can run this through the floor. You can see we have enough room. We can run it across and bring it back up. And the benefit of doing that is that we would not have to do any pumps. It would be gravity fed. However, again, I want this to be kind of industrial looking. So I think what I want to do, I think we're going to do it right here, is I want to run it up and over. And this is going to be unnecessarily high, but that's okay. Is that going to line up? I think it is. A bit of that, a little bit of that. And the height that we're doing this at isn't going to matter, because I think a Mark 1 pump would go, you know, less or more, and I think that either way we're fine. So we're going to plop down a Mark 1 pump. It's going to, why is it? Oh, we are off center. You don't want to be off center. Oh man, that worked out very nicely. Excellent. Excellent, excellent. All right. Mark 1 pump should be plenty. And it's entirely possible that we don't even need this pump. Get that away. Just have it hang out. That would look cool that way. But I don't want to risk it. We're not going to power it right now because these power poles are temporary, so don't worry about those. But we'll have this come over and back down, and what we might do is we might put a little support structure underneath it, and I'll show you because we're doing that over there. Or we might just leave it floating across. But let's continue on. With the scrap, we have an interesting math challenge, which is that we're producing 360 per machine. And that's quite a bit. So we could barely fit 2 machines on one belt, but that just doesn't work out good math for us. We need 4 belts at 540. And if we do a little bit of math, 540 minus the 360 that we're getting from here, we're on the ground now, is 180, and 180 is half of 360. So what we've done is we've done 2 machines at 360 coming out, right? And then the 360 here splitting, it's 180 to either side. And that gives us exactly the 540 we need. And then when one comes out, and then we have another one splitting in the middle, going to merge with the 2 360s, giving us our 4 540s. And so that comes out quite nicely, and then we will belt these along the way. Here we will be dropping off our copper ore. We already have all the water taken care of. As you can see, it comes along nicely. It's all piped already. All the copper ore will be coming down these belts, and that's already been distributed. As you can see, it splits over here. It's not a whole lot, so it's pretty easy on the math, right? It's all one belt. And then all of our copper ingots will merge up, come out this window. And then, of course, along this line, we will have all of our scrap as well coming along. The scrap and the silica will distribute across these 2 floors. You can see it's 8 belts worth of material, which is why it's going to be such a boon to have our silica coming from just right here. So we'll be able to bring those down this line and just plop them right in. And that's going to go to all of our foundries. All of our foundries will wrap around. So down here, and what we've done is we've merged them all onto the top floor. Now, we're producing way too many ingots to be going through one belt. Each belt will be carrying 720 ingots apiece, and so I've split them to go across to our assembly building. And here's where I've done the kind of architecture to make it look like it's being supported. And we might do this also on the other side for the pipes. I really like this, and this is going to pull in the greater complex's theme. So I think this is going to look very nice, and this is going to key into how we paint the walls and how we do everything. Sorry about that little jump there. I kept falling out of the sky. I needed to get power up here so I can fly and show what I'm doing. Anyway, the dual lines are carrying the same amount of material, and they are able to distribute more or less evenly between them. And I say more or less because we have different demands. And I'll go over that real quick. Like, one of the big benefits from the way that we're building this is that we are using the same source materials for both products. So the casings use both ingot types, and so does the sheets down below us. But we do have a different ratio between them. Now, before we talked about kind of splitting the ratio more or less evenly, but I have done more math since then, made some decisions, and I skewed the ratio heavily towards casings. Now, fortunately, casings produce a lot more per machine, so we actually had fewer machines once all was said and done. It also meant we ended up with an odd number, or an odd percentage, so we had to underclock one of them. But that works out fine. That means this line right here is not eating up as many of its aluminum ingots as that line. And that is just enough. We go down here to have one more machine in this row, then that row. And this will produce all of our sheeting. And of course, here is our copper ingot line going up to the top and distributing over. And the entire output of this building is beyond one belt. In fact, the casings alone are beyond one belt. So what will happen is we'll have one Mark V belt that's dedicated to casings as much as they can carry. And then the second belt will have all of our sheeting and the remaining casings. And they'll merge into, two belts that will go all the way back down to the station. And having those products merge isn't a big deal because they're going into the same freight platform anyway and will be split apart in storage in our warehouse later, or if we ever need to direct send them to another location for construction. Now, the reason why I don't need that because we're getting power off of the rail line. The reason why we skewed the ratio is because there are very few production recipes that use copper sheeting. And it's very realistic and entirely likely that we will not use any of them. Pretty much all of the production involves aluminum casing when we're talking about aluminum. Now, the sheeting is used for plenty of things, but it's mostly belting and I think drones and drone hubs and whatnot. So we'll use those in construction, but not in production. And the last thing I want to go over real quick is our station. Actually, it's a couple of things, but the station is related to it. First off, let's actually go back to the coal. It's over there. I said that we are now going to be bringing in, let's say over here, 720 coal per minute. And that's a problem because we cannot get 720 out of the coal mines up there. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring it in on a train. And we have coal not too far away. So we are right here. Down here is our tower of power, which is just about done. And behind it are 4 coal nodes. And you can see I've already gone and put mines on them. And there happens to be a limestone node there. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to wrap all 4 of those up into a belt and pick up some limestone along the way and send all of it up to that train station right here. And that train station is literally right there. And we'll have a train just ferry it up to this station, and that'll be simple enough. Also, what I've decided that we're going to do is that we are not going to source our water from that pond down there. That pond has always bothered me, and the reason is because I didn't want to have to run conveyors all the way up the countryside and all the way up here and then have to run them all the way back for the empty containers. Now, we had to do that before, but now that we have that train station over there, which is taking the 2 silica platforms out of this station, we now have 2 platforms to work with. And that is perfect. So we're going to import our bottled water from somewhere. I haven't decided where. And then we will use this station here to export the empty canisters. And that's going to make a cleaner loop. We don't have to have belts going all over the place. And it's also going to make the gimmick of importing bottles and exporting them seem a lot better. Doing it from down there really didn't make sense because it would have been easy just to run some piping up to here. So this is a much better way. I'm much happier about that. And that's what we're going to end up doing. So I think we're probably close on time. That's going to wrap, I think, what we're going to do for production today. Let's get back to the house and wrap this up. Welcome back home. Oh man, we put a lot of work in today, especially with those logistics. It took a lot of time to do, but I really like the way it's coming together. I think the aluminum facility is going to be beautiful and functional, and I have so much still to reveal about it, so I can't wait to get back to it. You'll have to come back next episode to see the wrap up of it. We definitely have another full episode worth of stuff that we can do at that site. So I'm looking forward to getting it done and getting it brought online. So thank you very much for coming out. Hopefully you're enjoying this little mini series. Hopefully it's not taking too long for the pacing. It seems like these videos are starting to get a little bit more traction. I feel like people are enjoying this style where we spend a little more time explaining and showing everything we're doing and not just bloop it into a time lapse. So definitely stop by the comments section. Let me know what you think about this, about the pacing, about the location, the design of it. That feedback is invaluable. And, we content creators just love to hear from you guys. Even if you don't have a question, just stop by and say, hey, this is cool, I like it. It's very appreciated, and it's very encouraging for us to continue to do what we do. And definitely leave a like if you're enjoying it. But I think that's going to be it for today. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode, the final stage of this 4-part miniseries. So thank you for watching.